I'll give this stat to you. Miami are 27-1 when they hold teams under 100. Philadelphia, on the other hand, well, they've lost every game that they haven't scored over 100 points. No Harden. Well, he was there, but was he there? No Embiid. Was there, but was he there?
JD, I have one question. Where was he at, JD? Where was he at? Where was he at?
Look, like I say, sometimes there's distractions down in Miami that just, you can be in two places at the same time. My mind can be here, but my body could be somewhere else. Yeah, and that's all I'm going to leave it as. All I'm going to say is, for the viewers this weekend, I said this off camera, James Harden is very, very happy that the Sunday game has been pushed back to a later time, because those early games, they ain't helping him right now. 16-9-5 is not good enough for a former MVP in this league. And BJ, it leaves me with this thought. Maybe Miami have an easier path to the finals than we all thought in terms of the threat that Philadelphia are going to pose in this series.
You know what, JD? As we just said about the last series, talking about Boston and Milwaukee, and this is the playoffs and anything can happen. Injuries can happen. Just ask the Philadelphia 76ers. These series can take on interesting turns along the way, along the path. So it's important that you stay focused, you stay locked in, and you just win the games that you have an opportunity to win, and you continue to compete because you never know what's going to happen. Certainly on paper, I understand what you're saying, and I think many to the outside casual fan, you will say that. But let me tell you something. You let your hair down just a little bit, or you relax just a little bit, things will turn, and they'll turn very quickly in this league. So, give this team, Philadelphia, credit. They hung in there last night. That game wasn't as big of a margin of victory as it seemed as you look at the score. This game was late into the third quarter, early into the fourth quarter. It was still a 5-point game or so. So, I would caution every team that plays. These are really good players. They didn't get here. Even though they're minus Joel Embiid, you have to play and you still have to come out there and win the game.
When you look at it, though, when you look at the facts of the situation, the Miami Heat do have an easier run to the conference finals, because I don't think going up against Giannis Antetokounmpo in the conference finals is easy. But let's look at them in. They played game 1 at home against a team in the year 2022 that started DeAndre Jordan in their starting lineup, with all due respect to DeAndre Jordan. That's pretty easy for the NBA playoffs in the second round. Let's just call it what it is. In the first round, they played up against the 8-seed Atlanta Hawks, who had to qualify via a play-in. They had guys Clint Capella out injured, John Collins out injured, and now they got Joel Embiid out injured for the Philadelphia 76ers. So Miami, although they're missing Kyle Lowry, he missed a game, and Jimmy Butler missed some time in that first round, they're walking through. Let's look at the other teams. The Boston Celtics, they had to face two of the best scorers of all time. The Milwaukee Bucks, they had to face the Boston Celtics now without Chris Middleton. The Golden State Warriors, they had to face the league's MVP, and then they had to face, the second best regular season team in the Memphis Grizzlies. And the Phoenix Suns, they had to face the New Orleans Pelicans, who may have been a low seed, but the way they were playing since this trade deadline, they weren't meant to be a low seed because they were playing some great basketball. So when you look at all the contending teams left in the playoffs, the easiest path to the finals is in Miami's hands, and it's up to them what they choose to do with it. But I don't think it's been as difficult for them as it has been for any of the other teams left in the playoffs so far.
BJ, what makes me laugh about people on Earth? When they say, with all due respect, and then they still slap you in the mouth. That slap in the mouth still counts, Mo, right?
I heard that, JD. I heard that.
That slap in the mouth still counts, right? You can't slap someone in the mouth and then be like, with all due respect, though.
All I said was he was starting the game. I mean, if you could pick every player left in the playoffs to be in the starting lineup, I'll take my chances with DeAndre Jordan at the 5. I mean, we've seen it. Cut from Brooklyn, cut from the Lakers, now he's in Philly. With all due respect, I think the Miami Heat were pretty happy about that matchup.
BJ, I want to say this real quick.
I want to give you something, because I want you to say what you're about to say, but I also want you to give me the lens through the guard perspective. Do you feel like maybe they should give Tyrese Maxey the ball more and maybe get James Harden off the ball to allow more space for him to, let's say, facilitate the offense because of the great things that he's shown that he can do in round 1?
Man, JD, that's a great question, great observation here. And one of the things with Tyrese Maxey is the following. This man plays with pace, and he plays downhill as well and as fast as any guard in the league. What I saw in the game 1 was you saw the Miami Heat extend their defense to really put pressure okay, to try to slow down. And they were very successful, in my opinion, of slowing down James Harden. They extended the game 94 feet. However, to alleviate any of that pressure that Miami may think about applying to the Philadelphia 76ers, just give that ball to Tyrese Maxey, because now that's an advantage for Tyrese Maxey and the Philadelphia 76ers if they're able to play with space on the floor. So I think the Philadelphia 76ers, one of the things they probably will do is put the ball exclusively in Tyrese Maxey's hands, especially in the absence of Joel Embiid, and see can they play with more pace and more pace and space in the game. Because Tyrese Maxey, trust me, guys, there's no trying to apply pressure to him how fast he plays.
You know, BJ, you're right. They need to play with more pace and more space, and that includes who they play at that center position. As I said, they had some success with Paul Reed, but the biggest success for the Sixers in that game one was when they actually played without a center. They went super small. Obviously, missing Joel Embiid is a huge part of it, but they went super small, and they were trying to play with more pace and more space, and they did have some success. They managed to claw their way back into the game, but unfortunately, every time they got back in, Miami pulled away again. What I'm interested to see is, can Joel Embiid return for this series and be the difference maker? If they can split the first 4 games, if they can just win the 2 games at home in Philadelphia and have the series tied up at 2-2 and Embiid returns for game 5, then I think we could have a series on our hands. But if he doesn't return, I'm sorry to say to all the Philadelphia 76ers fans, it's not looking great for you guys right now.
Double M, I want to know, do you need to see more aggression from James Harden? Because I loved what he did in the first half. I thought the aggression in the first half, but to only come out and score 4 points in the second half and put up only 4 shots, is that enough from someone that we classify as the second string in this team offensively?
Well, you know, calling James Harden a second string, I don't think he would ever consider himself a second string. You know, talking to James, he always considers himself in the MVP conversation of the league every year. He thinks he's one of the best players in the world, and rightly so. He's been the best scorer of the basketball over the past 10 years. So, you know, he's up there with the best of them. But the thing with James Harden that really frustrated me watching the game last night is he would attack the paint. Sometimes he'd get the call, sometimes he wouldn't get the call, but it's the reactions after the referees don't blow the whistle. He's jumping up and down, pleading with the referees for the free throws. Meanwhile, the Miami Heat, they're pushing the ball up the court and they're attacking. That's one thing that doesn't sit right with me, especially from who is now the veteran leader on this roster. Defense is where championships are won and lost. We can talk about the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I think Philadelphia and Doc Rivers had a good game plan. They were trying to take away a lot of the motion offense, a lot of the dribble handoffs. And if they can stay disciplined and stick with that, then I think they can have some success. But James Harden, he needs to stay focused. He needs to not let himself get frustrated with the lack of calls, because this is the playoffs. You're not going to get all those regular season calls that allow you to get the 35 points a game and you're shooting 17 free throws. This is the playoffs. The games are meant to be cool. So I want to see him stay disciplined in defense and really buy in on that end, like we're seeing guys like Devin Booker do for the Phoenix Suns, who is an elite scorer, but now is buying in on defense. And then the offense becomes easier. When you get stops, you get out and run. Tyrese Maxey can get out and run. James Harden is an elite passer. He can find all his teammates in transition, but you can't get those easy looks in transition without playing defense first.
This is where I'm really, really interested because, of course, Miami versus Philadelphia, game 4, we bring it to you Sunday. We're going to break it down. I told you, James Harden has a longer rest on Saturday night. So 1 a.m., it will be available for you on Sky Sports Arena and Sky Sports Main Event. They'll be back in Philadelphia by that stage. He'll be in his court, in his own bed, have his own surroundings, be in his own gym. So it'll be interesting to see where the series weighs up at that stage. I talk about another interesting series. Let's flip back to the West, because I know, in terms of what we call BJ Armstrong on this show, the point guard guru, because I know that he's interested in a lot of the things that's happening in the backcourt. Now, I'm looking forward to this battle I'm seeing in the backcourt right now between lethal weapon 3, Klay, Steph, and Jordan Poole, because of their movement, the limitless range, and everything else that they do in terms of connectivity versus that hunger, that versatility that you're seeing right now in Memphis, in Ja, Dylan Brooks, and of course, Desmond Bane. BJ, this battle is going off in the backcourt, and I thought it was probably the best game and definitely the tightly contested game that we saw out of all of the first games in round 2. But we need to turn around and break this in properly, because I want to know, and me and Mo haven't seen each other's team, by the way, so we both had a combined 5 of Golden State and Memphis. Now, I'm interested to turn around and know what Mo's perspective would be in terms of his starting 5 in terms of these combined teams. But BG, you're going to have to decide and vote, because you're, like we said, you're the point guard guru. So when you turn around and see these starting 5s combined, I want to know who you believe has the better starting 5 at this stage. Oh, there's not that much difference, Mo, in fairness. So you're thinking along the same lines as me.
It's just one difference, Jaydee.
There's only one difference. So, BJ, who are you hedging your bets on? Triple J or Brandon Clark? That's really the question here.
Well, I first of all, I can't help but look at the salaries of this team. This is like this is like
The roster
who's going to pay the luxury tax for all those players? You got like 4 max players on that team, right? You look at Brooklyn, they're like 300 over the salary cap. You look at these guys, they're like, that's like a $500 million team. Sky Sports. Who's going to pay for this salary?
Man, I got Ja Morant on the rookie contract and Brandon Clark on the rookie contract. Those extensions ain't kicked in yet. Man's all legit.
Don't worry about it. They'll pick up the bill at Chase Center. Don't worry about it. They'll pick up the bill.
I don't know. I'm just going to say, I think Jared Jackson Jr., probably, him and Draymond Green, that, Sparty, that's the Michigan State Spartans for all. I think that team probably has a little advantage, but God, how are you going to pay that team? Like, you got Ja Morant, who's a max player, Steph Curry, max player, Klay Thompson, max player, Jared Jackson Jr., he's up there, Draymond's somewhere near the max. I'm like, wow.
BJ,
who's going to come off the bench?
BJ, this is 2K. Just ignore the red. We just ignore.
Just ignore it.
I don't see the time sheet.
But BJ, my take is, you're talking about that team with Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to have the advantage. My question is, for how long? How long is it going to be before he fouls out again? He had a great game 1. He was shooting threes all up and down the court. But if we go back and look at the previous series against the Minnesota Timberwolves, that boy couldn't stay on the court longer than 20 minutes. He was fouling left, right, center. He was fouling more than I do in a pickup game. And that's egregious levels of fouling. My friends will be able to tell you I fouled on every possession. And that's what Jaren Jackson Jr. was doing. Brandon Clark came off the bench, and he was the reason that the Memphis Grizzlies won some of those basketball games. Now, I don't think he gets the credit because he does all the dirty work. All the offensive rebounds, tipping the ball out, like Ja Morant hitting that huge 3 in that clutch win against the Timberwolves. That's all coming off the offensive rebounds of Brandon Clark. And, you see the impact that these guys have that do the dirty work, that don't really get the credit because he's not shooting the threes and getting all the glory. So I want to just give him some respect and give him credit, because if you knew nothing about basketball and you started watching just the playoffs, you would think the Memphis Grizzlies have one of the best centers in the league coming off the bench, the way that boy played in round 1.
But let's have a quick brief look at the Phoenix Suns, because what happens when you're the best team in the regular season is we kind of skip past you because we're expecting you to do great things. That's just naturally what happens, especially when you've been to the NBA Finals and looking to respond. Monty Williams and the team down there are handling their business. So I'm going to give you guys one question each, just a reflection of what we've seen so far in the Phoenix versus Dallas series. And BJ, the first one goes to you. What did you kind of make in terms of the return of Devin Booker? And of course, what you're seeing from CP as the Phoenix Suns took a 1-0 lead?
Well, when you see Devin Booker and what he brings, obviously he's an elite player, and they're going to need all of Devin Booker, a healthy Devin Booker, if they're going to advance and get to the NBA Finals and win the NBA Finals, because that is without question the goal of this team. You say it's the return of Devin Booker. You know what? This team was built with the following in mind. They have a lot of depth. They are ready to go, and they really have a next up mentality. So they can afford to lose Devin Booker, and they've played without Devin Booker in the past. They can afford for a span of a couple of games or so without Chris Paul and these guys, DeAndre Ayton, and that's been, every team has had to do that through the course of the season, especially over the last 2 or 3 years. However, if they're going to win the NBA Finals, they're going to need Devin Booker. And you could see Devin Booker's impact on the game. We talk about offensively what he does. You know what I really love about Devin Booker and the way he plays is the effort and energy that he brings to the team, especially on the defensive end. He takes on that challenge. He gets after it. And you know what? We know he's a sensational scorer. He's a very, he's a great, what we would call, isolation player. And he has the ability to score in the mid-range. He can get to the basket, and he can play in transition. So, you know what? With Devin Booker, they are an elite team. But this team, I think, is prepared to say, we are going to get there and not make any excuses. And that's what I love most about this team.
Talking about players that don't make excuses, Luka Doncic is someone that has definitely got different level of energy this year. I mean, winning the first playoff series in his career has definitely given him incentive. But Mo, I want to know what your perspective is now. 1-0 down, of course, to the Western Conference champions from last year. How does he now approach game 2 as he tries to reverse the series?
You know, Luka Doncic is built for the playoffs. He's a scary proposition. No matter who else is on the court with him, you have to be afraid when Luka Doncic is playing in the playoffs. Just ask the LA Clippers. You know, when he was coming in his second year in the league, he was giving them nightmares. I'm sure they never want to play him again in that Western Conference playoff run. But yesterday night, what I saw from Luka Doncic was spectacular, but we're going to need to see even more from not just him, but his teammates as well. Because I feel like Game 1 was a little bit of a wake-up call for the Dallas Mavericks. They got through the Utah Jazz in the first round and a bunch of games without Luka being in the lineup because of injury. And they found it pretty easy with their strategy of finding those corner shooters who were wide open in the pockets for those shots. And early on in Game 1 against Phoenix were ready. They were waiting in those passing lanes to pick off those passes. Luka went straight to what he does best. He was hunting the matchups he wants out of the screen roll action early on in Game 1 and trying to get those mismatches, get Chris Paul guarding him so he can use his strength, get DeAndre Ayton guarding him so he can get off balance. But DeAndre Ayton did a great job. With all fairness to him, the Phoenix Suns did a great job. And if their strategy is to let Luka do what he does, they're going to be relatively successful in this series because it's not been a great game for Jalen Brunson. I feel like a lot of the other role players outside of Maxi Kleber, who scored 5 3-pointers in quick succession early on in the game, kept them close, but you can't rely on that every night, that Maxi Kleber is going to score 5 of his 6 first 3-pointers that he takes. So I think it's going to be an interesting series, but everything I saw in Game 1 points in favor of the Phoenix Suns, especially because they have the big inside presence and big men who Jason Kidd said aren't like Whiteside and Gobert. They can actually score the basketball.
Oh, it's so interesting you bring up Whiteside and Gobert because I've left a special segment just at the bottom of this show that I know is going to make my guys on the panel smile. As much as I love our debates and I love our breakdowns of previews of games, let me tell you what I enjoy with my boys breaking down the most. The offseason and roster construction. And it's time, yeah? Utah enter the room because it's time that this super rigid defensive team, we have the question marks that are in front of them. BJ Armstrong, I know you take pride in roster construction. I know you take pride in looking forward. So I'm going to give you the headlines first of all. Donovan Mitchell, the trajectory is now being questioned after being outplayed by Jalen Brunson in that Dallas series. The alternative option, of course, we look at is Rudy Gobert. But where is the option when you took a look at Gobert? And in terms of looking at what he's doing defensively and the restrictions that he has offensively, those players are tied in, BJ. Danny Ainge is known in the NBA for making risky moves. But is it time? And I hear he's on the phone right now because he knows I'm on his man. Yeah, I'm on you, Danny. Yeah, there's pressure on you right now.
BJ yeah, that is Danny. That's Danny calling right now. That's Danny calling right now.
Utah fans don't hate me, but is it time to blow it up?
Well, I think Danny Ainge, now who's the president of this team, is going to look at this roster and he's going to take a very deep dive into the roster and getting familiar with what they can and can't do. The positives about Utah right now is both Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell are currently under contract. So Danny Ainge is not under pressure to have to do anything. That's first and foremost. I think the excitement of trading players, this league has become a very transactional league. Well, now we get more excited about the rumors than we actually get more excited than the actual game or the players that's currently on the roster. So I think that's the positive thing. When you look at Rudy Gobert, you say, okay, what does Rudy Gobert bring to the team, right? We know he's a terrific rim protector. He has size, so forth and so on. And then you look at Donovan Mitchell and you do the same. And then I think Danny Ainge and company will make the decision that needs to be made. All right. These decisions get made in twofold, right? You have the business of basketball, and the business is they're both under contract. And then you have the basketball business. What are one of these players or both of these players going to need to be the best version of themselves? And I think Danny Ainge, who's as experienced of an executive in this league, is not going to push the panic. He's not going to listen to all the outside narratives, nor should he, because he has two players that are all-star players currently under contract right now, and then build from there. So I believe firmly that Danny Ainge will do what's necessary. He knows that situation better than any of us. He's been watching it all year, and he'll make the appropriate moves when those times, when those times present themselves and what he feels is going to be the best direction this organization needs to go in.
Well, BJ, you talk about both players are under contract and he doesn't need to be in a rush to make a decision. Well, my question is, how many times are we going to see the same story unfold before we realize it's time to make a change? I'm pretty sure there was a quote by Einstein about only a fool makes the same mistake over and over again. So we're looking at the Utah Jazz, and we've seen what we've seen again and again and again. Great in the regular season, and when it comes to the playoffs, it all falls apart. This season, it fell apart against a Dallas Mavericks team that was missing Luka Doncic to start the series. The fact that they lost games to the Mavericks without Luka Doncic was very worrisome. They have to make a change. And what was reported yesterday, even though Rudy's come out and dismissed it, is apparently Rudy Gobert has said, it's either him or me, pick one to build around. And if you're looking at what either player brings to the team, contracts aside, because we're going to talk about the contracts in a second, but what either player brings to the team, and we talk about defense with championships, Donovan Mitchell is not there defensively. Donovan Mitchell could not guard anyone in that series. I did not see him playing on the defensive side of the ball. Rudy Gobert, we talk about players on offense. Does Luka need more help? Does Bradley Beal need more help? But what about on defense? Rudy Gobert is being left to pick up the slack for lineups where 4 of the guys on the court cannot play defense, and he's left to, we got Gobert behind us, he'll just block it and it'll be fine. No, that's not acceptable. They have no point of attack defense. They're allowing penetration from the perimeter and just relying on this guy. And when offenses spread the floor and force him to be out, either they're going to give up an open corner 3 or they're going to give up layups at the rim because he can't do everything. So when you look at this team, they've got to build around it. And when I look at Rudy Gobert, I think he kind of gets, you guys know, I've not been the biggest fan of Rudy Gobert over the years, but I do feel like he gets the short end of the stick. And I say it like this. Donovan Mitchell averaged this season more turnovers per game than passes to Rudy Gobert. If you put Rudy Gobert on the Dallas Mavericks, Luka Doncic will get him 20 points a game just from alley-oops alone. He has the tools. We see him in the Olympics. We see him for France. He can score the basketball when he's put in positions to do that. But the way that they play right now isn't optimized for him. So if you had to pick between, I know you don't have to pick one of these guys because they're both under contract, but if you had to pick between one of these 2 guys, I'm going to roll with the guy that can play defense. That's who I would roll with. I think Donovan Mitchell, he could be great. He could go to Miami. He can go to wherever he wants and be a fantastic player in this league. But I feel like Rudy Gobert's got a short end of the stick here because his teammates really let him down.
BJ, that's a great point. That is a great point. Donovan Mitchell came into this league, and you think about some of the peers, Jason Tatum, Devin Booker. Look at the trajectory that they're on at this moment in time. Is he on that same trajectory in terms of leading a franchise, especially with his offensive responsibilities?
We talked about roster construction, and when you look at this roster right now, okay, currently, you say, now who's complimenting who on this roster? Okay, let's look at the role players. You have Bogdanovic, okay, who's really an undersized player without question, playing the 4 position. What is he really doing to complement this team as far as defense? We want to talk about defense here, okay? Then we have Royce O'Neal. Then we have Donovan, I'm going to leave Donovan Mitchell out of it. And then we have the point guard, Mike Conley. All right. Mike Conley is an aging point guard, all right? He's an aging, what's the first thing that leaves as you get older is your speed and quickness. So he's already small, and he's a small point guard playing with, a 7-footer. That's a tough combination. Now, we talk about defense. We can take a team that Mo is quite familiar with. We can look at the Boston Celtics. Just a year or 2 ago, we were talking about the same thing with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, right? Look how Jason Tatum has really evolved as a player. These players are going to evolve. Coaching does matter. And right now, you have to look at this situation and say, Donovan Mitchell, what can he be and what should he be? Without question, he has the physical tools to be a better than average defensive player. Okay, but now we have to put him in a situation where we support him with athletes. More importantly, you've heard me say this time and time again, maybe he's a lead guard. So I think right now you have to really look at, say, what can we be? What should we be? And then look at it before you start panicking and just saying, I got to trade this guy. Because the most important thing when you make a trade is how you're going to replace those 20 points a night. That's not very easy to find in the NBA. It's just replacing a player like Donovan Mitchell. So I think you take a look internally to what this team could be. Give it a shot before trading players, because you don't just replace those guys.
They've given it a shot. They've been giving it a shot, though. This season, last season, the season
old regime, I agree, the old regime. But this isn't Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge would not have a team like this. he would not have constructed that team. The old regime, that's what they did. They were an offensive team. They shot threes, so forth and so on. Danny Ainge is going to say, you know what, if we're going to be a good team, we got to look at the other side of the ball. I agree with what you're saying, Mo, but you can't tell me defensively this is a good team other than Rudy Gobert.
No.
Okay, so I think Danny Ainge will bring a new energy. They'll bring a new energy to this organization.
At least, you laugh when you talk about Bogdanovic's defense. Well, at least he was trying. You saw the game 3, game 4, he was making a concerted effort on the defensive end. Royce O'Neal was buying it on the defensive end. It was Donovan Mitchell who was the glaring. Obviously, Mike Conley is older and you can't prevent age. I personally don't think I would be starting Mike Conley on a playoff team right now. But when I'm looking at Donovan Mitchell, I'm just not seeing the lack of effort. And if you're the leader of a franchise and you're the best player, you have to buy in. Even Rudy Gobert came out and said it. You see guys like Devin Booker, apparently this is what he said. You see guys like Devin Booker buying in on defense. That's what you need from your superstar players. You talk about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Well, guess what? Both of them try on defense. Jaylen Brown was an elite defender his first few years in the league. Jason Tatum buys in, and you saw how great he was on defense. But Donovan Mitchell, it just seems like he's waiting and bring it up on the offensive side of the floor. And we talk about Danny Ainge, he had the chance to make some moves to this roster on the trade deadline. I didn't see any moves being made. I didn't see any defensive minds being added to this team.
What's the point of making a move now? Like, what's the point?
Just to improve, because you saw this team last year and the year before and the year before.
Okay. Yeah, all right. I personally think Danny did the right thing. You stay patient, you stay the course, because you know what you have here. Both of these guys, talking about Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, they're all-star caliber players. There's no need to panic. Now, can they get this together? But more importantly, can you put people in place and have the leadership from the coaching position, whether it's Quinn Snyder or someone else, that's going to demand that these guys play a different style, so that we can't just solely rely. Clearly, their style of play on the defensive end is just funnel everything to Rudy, and Rudy will take care of it. Can we put someone in place that's going to demand that they play a different style of play? And can we put 3 different players or 5 different players or a team around them that's going to defend and play a different style than they're currently playing?
Shout out to BJ's t-shirt. That's exactly how I feel about Utah right now. Stars at war. Danny Ainge, look. Made a lot of risky moves in the NBA, my guy. I've seen it. Trading down for Jason Tatum, moving away from the big 3. But what you've got to do in Utah is arguably going to be the biggest risk of all. 155.6 million is already on that Utah roster. And that isn't draft picks or minimum guys. That's guaranteed already. A lot of big moves to be done down in Utah. And we're going to bring it to you here on the Heat Check because we are ready.